Hi, I'm Kirk Bevins, and you're listening to the weekly Dartscast. 177!
Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast. I'm Alex Moss, and joining me is Move Over Ted Everett, Move Over Ryan Meikle. He is the Darts Strava King. It is Darts statistician Burton, DeWitt. How are you doing?
I'm a little under the weather, but the darts helped get me through the day. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing well, thank you, and I hope you get well soon. We're almost at the end of 2021, but we've got one more show for you to bring you before the end of the year. We've got two great guests coming up, but there's only one place to start, isn't there? And that is with the PDC World Championship. We've got down to the final 8 players. Going Price's title defence enters the final few furlongs, but who are his biggest threats now to retaining the Sid Waddell Trophy next week?
Well, I mean, the person who I said was his biggest threat, and a lot of people said was his biggest threat, is no longer in the tournament, and it was a player that many thought he would be playing in this round, this upcoming round. You not being one of the people who thought it, because you correctly predicted that Michael Smith would upset Johnny Clayton. But as a result of that, and we'll get more to that match in a question or two, but as a result of that match, I think Michael Smith has to be one of his biggest threats, because Michael Smith so far this tournament has looked better than Gerwyn Price. And it's not that Gerwyn Price hasn't looked good, but he hasn't looked great. He hasn't looked like the world champion. He did in times in the first match against Richie Edas, especially those last couple sets as he came back and won that match. He did at times, especially big key moments in the match against Dirk van Dijvenbode, but he did give Dirk the first set. He didn't really face much of a challenge in that match. And against Kim Huybrechts, he did everything in his power to try to lose that match. He gave Kim chances in almost every leg except for the last leg decider where he did step up his game. But Kim Huybrechts had ample opportunity to break and end that set earlier and win the match and didn't. Michael Smith, yes, he had to come through a clash against Johnny Clayton, but he played like a world champion in that match, and he played like someone who's ready to take that next step. If he plays like that against Gerwyn Price, and Gerwyn Price doesn't up his game, Michael Smith will win. And Michael Smith might win handily based on the form we've seen so far. But there's a reason Gerwyn Price is the world number one and the reigning world champion. You think that if he needs to, he will find more game. Beyond that, you can't look past Peter Wright, but Peter Wright has struggled against Gerwyn Price in major finals as of late. And Callan Ritz, if he gets past Peter Wright, this could be his week, but we don't know what he'll do if he has to go to 7 sets against the world champion. Gary Anderson finally looked good against Rob Cross, the first time that all tournament that Gary Anderson really did look good, because he did not look good against Ian White, and he looked patchy against Adrian Lewis. He does not look like he'd be able to turn the tides on Gerwyn Price from what we've seen so far, but if he takes that performance against Rob Cross, he could pose some problems. But I think the biggest challenger is who I started with, and it's who he has to play in the next match, Michael Smith, because Michael Smith really did look like a world champion against Johnny Clayton, and maybe come January 3rd, he will be.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting lineup that we've got for the quarterfinals, and Peter Wright just touched on it on his post-match interview on Sky just after he got the last of those spots in the quarterfinals. He said you've got the 3 old-timers in there, if you like, Peter Wright, Mervyn King, Gary Anderson. You've also got the 2 players in there that are in their 30s. Well, 3 actually, Michael Smith, Gerwyn Price and James Wade, almost forgot him there. And then you've got the 2 youngsters, Luke Humphries and Callan Ritz. But starting with Gerwyn Price, as you say, it's been not plain sailing for him in this World Championship so far, but he has found a way to win, and particularly that game against Kim Huybrechts, which went down to a sudden death leg, the 6-5 in the final set. He managed to hold it together and get over the line, even though he wasn't playing at his best. And we come on to his next round after that against Dirk van Dijvenbode, dropped the first set, then wins 12 legs in a row, some big finishes in there as well. And I think he averaged around 103 for those last 4 sets. So we do know that the form is there if he can put it all together, but it is going to be if he can put it together for these final 3 days of the event. And coming up next, Michael Smith, I think that is arguably his biggest challenge now for the rest of this tournament. If he can get past Michael Smith, particularly if Michael Smith does turn up and perform somewhere close to the level, or if not better than the level that he performed against Johnny Clayton, then Gerwyn Price knows that he is in for a tough night at the office. And Price himself even said it in one of his interviews after the games that it was before we knew the result of the Michael Smith-Johnny Clayton game, but he was already touting Michael Smith from his previous performances in the tournament, saying that if I don't win it, I think Michael Smith is going to win it. And that's coming from someone that won it at the start of this year, almost into next year now, but the world number one. So that's some high praise indeed, but it is all about whether Michael Smith can do it again. And that's been a problem in the past for him. He's really shone in tournaments, but when it's come down to those final few rounds, he's just not had the final bit to get over the line. So if he can get it all together, then yeah, I definitely agree that Michael Smith is going to be a massive challenge for him. And just checking the outright odds with the title sponsor William Hill, they have changed in the last few minutes, because before it was going price at a 2-1 favourite, then Michael Smith the second favourite 4-1. But what we've just seen from Peter Wright putting out Ryan Searle 4-1, he's now gone the second favourite 10-3, and I think Peter Wright is right in contention as well now after what we've seen in the second half of his game against Damon Heta and in the game just now against Ryan Searle. It does feel like he's warming up for a bid to get that second world title. So for me, I still think like you, I think it is Michael Smith the big hurdle for going price, and if he gets to those last couple of rounds, I think he will just do enough to get over the line. But I'll just throw in another spanner in the works, and that is the crowd. We're probably going to touch on it more in our next show when we review the whole tournament, but the crowd, unfortunately, could have a say as well, and we've seen it in the games already this year, particularly with Going Price, that if they turn up like they have before, they can really get on his back, and hopefully that is not going to be a factor, but we can't rule it out.
No, it's no surprise at all if the answer to this question has changed several times over the last few days, because there have been some absolute belters. But what has been your match of the tournament so far?
Yeah, you're definitely right. And all I can say is, how good is it to have the tiebreak back this year? You touched on it in our preview show for this tournament. You said how much you were looking forward to the tiebreak rule coming back for this year, because we missed out on it last year. And it is one of those ingredients which makes the World Championship the special event that it is. And we've been fortunate that we've seen it a few times in the last few days since the Christmas break. But the first time we saw it in the event, and this was one of the contenders for me before the Christmas break, and it was that Stephen Bunting-Ross Smith game, which went into overtime. And Ross Smith, I think it was a 1-6-7, a 102 finishes back-to-back legs to get over the line to knock out Stephen Bunting. Before we had the tie-breaks come in, we don't have them in the first round, but the Willie O'Connor, Danny Lauby and Willie Ball and Bradley Brooks games were definitely up there. Of course, anyone that finishes a game with a 9-darter, that deserves a mention, doesn't it? But since then, since we've come back from the Christmas break and the format's gone up, I think my answer has changed in the last few days. It was going to be the Gerwin Price-Kim Huybrechts game, and unfortunately I was away that day, so I didn't get to see the game live, but I've seen a few highlights of it, and it definitely looked like an Ali Pali classic. A lot of people are calling it, and for a game to go to that sudden death leg was going to take some stopping. But I think the last couple of days we've seen 3 games better than that for me anyway, and the first of those was the Rob Cross-Darryl Gurney game, which again went the 7 sets, and Rob Cross coming through 4-3 to finish it off with a 170 finish was some good stuff. And we always love a Rob Cross appreciation minute, and it was good to see Darryl Gurney playing back to somewhere near his best. But that's been overtaken as well. The very next night, the Johnny Clayton Michael Smith game could potentially be game of the year in our year-end awards. I know the World Championship does dominate a lot of the awards, and for good reason as well, because that game had pretty much everything, didn't it? 25 180s, that the big finishes were coming in towards the end of it, and it went to the tiebreak as well, and Michael just coming through 6-4, and it was a back and forth game. Johnny going 2-0 up, Michael winning the next 3 sets to go 3-2, and in that last set 4-3 down. Not big finishes, but you got to say key finishes, 72, 65, 68, when you're only getting 1 or 2 darts at a double. And Michael Smith was up to the task to get that win, to beat the player of the year for all intents and purposes, to get through. That is my match of the tournament so far. But I will give a mention to the Chris Dobey, Luke Humphries game today, because that in any other year could have been the match of the World Championship. That went 5-3 in the last set, both averaging 97, 25 180s again in that one, and a lot of high finishes as well. 2 players that really did go up against each other, and that was another game that went back and forth. But I think it is hard to look past that Johnny Clayton Michael Smith game. That is going to be the game of the tournament, and if it's not, well, we are going to be in for a treat when the darts returns after the new year.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's not, because that would mean there's been an absolute, well, I was going to say an absolute classic, but that was already an absolute classic. So I guess an absolute classic. I don't know what's the level above absolute classic. And I'll start as well before Christmas. You mentioned that Danny Lauby, Willie O'Connor match. That was a great match in a race to 5 going all the way down to the last leg. Granted, there's no tiebreak there's no win by 2 tiebreak in the last set in the first round, but it still was a great match, and both of them played up to the level that's needed to make a great match. And following day, another one, Willie Borland and Bradley Brooks, similar situation. I don't remember how it ended, but I know it was a pretty good match anyway. But since Christmas, it really has changed hands every day. That Gezi-Kim Huybrechts match, on the last question, I mentioned how Gezi just tried everything in his power to let Kim win that match, but Kim couldn't hit his doubles. But that just added to the drama. Take that aside. Take those missed doubles and those missed opportunities aside. It was a match where they were both playing really well. The averages ended up in the low 90s, but they would have been in the high 90s but for that last set where Kim just missed so many opportunities to win. But Gezi missed so many opportunities, which gave Kim those opportunities. But it added to the drama, and it was such a back-and-forth match even before that. And that final set probably was the set of the tournament just because of how tense it was. But the following day, that Rob Cross-Daryl Gurney match, a fantastic fight back from Daryl Gurney, but Rob Cross, that finishing at the end, get over the line in a match where it looked like Daryl Gurney had turned the tides and Daryl Gurney was going to get over the line and win it. But that match wasn't that far off from going the distance in every single set. 5 of the 6 sets before the final set went 5 legs. The only one that didn't was the 5th set where Daryl Gurney started his comeback. It was a match that every leg really did matter, and a dart here or there could have been the difference between not just Rob Cross winning it 4-3, but Daryl Gurney winning it to 0. That's how tight this match was, and just how good a match it was from start to finish. And then yesterday, as of the time we're recording, there's no words that can describe that Johnny Clayton Michael Smith match that haven't been said already or haven't been invented yet, because it's not just the match of the tournament. It's the match of the year so far, I think, and one of the best matches I've ever seen. Michael Smith really did look like a world champion, but so did Johnny Clayton, and that's what made this match so good. Yes, Michael Smith ended up under 100 average, but for much of the match, Johnny Clayton was over 105, and Michael Smith was hanging in there. Michael Smith was creating chances to stay in the match against someone who was playing at an unbeatable level. Michael Smith was hanging with that, and then when Johnny Clayton dropped off just that little bit, Michael Smith turned the tides and won the match. And even still, Johnny Clayton came back at him and had chances to win. That's one of the matches of all time. And just so that I don't go on for an hour, the Gary Anderson Rob Cross match today as of recording, very good match, but nothing can even come close to that Johnny Clayton Michael Smith match. If something tops that, we've had one hell of a match and one hell of an end to this tournament. But I hope it does, but that's one of the matches of all time. Credit to Michael Smith, credit to Johnny Clayton. And just one added thing, it was played in such a high spirit, fist bumping each other as they threw bullets at one another, back and forth, hitting each other with force. And they just gave each other high fives and fist bumps because that was the level and that was the respect they had, not just for each other, but for the game they were playing. It's not often we can see a match where even the players involved are able to just know that what their opponent is throwing back at them is world class. And we got to appreciate it.
It was lovely to see. Well, let's move on to our first guest on this week's show. It is with the Sky Sports commentator, Rod Studd.
I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the Sky Sports commentator, Rod Studd. Thanks for the time, Rod. How are you doing?
Absolute pleasure. No problem at all. I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. And we're talking in between sessions at the World Championship. We've got 3 more last 16 games to come tonight. But what have you made of this year's offering at Ali Pali as we approach the quarterfinals?
I've really enjoyed it. I think it's been a tremendous tournament. It got off to a real flyer, didn't it, with Willie Borland's 9 darter and Lavanowski's sort of 9 as well. And that was a great start, the whole tournament. I just think it's built with some absolutely brilliant games, some terrific fight backs. I mean, last night was just absolutely wonderful, wasn't it? Michael Smith and Johnny Clayton. Most wonderful game and real thrilling stuff. And hopefully we'll have a real climax on January the 3rd too.
We'll come back to the Worlds later, but we last had you on our show just after your return to the Sky commentary box at the World Match Play in the summer. What have the last 5 or so months been like since then as you've built up your return?
Yeah, I mean, it's been just, as you say there, building up to the return here. And, I've been very much looking forward to it because, it was something I've missed greatly. Last year, I think, everyone missed it, didn't they, because there was no crowd. And, I enjoyed the World Championship last year watching at home, but, I really was sad that I wasn't here. So I'm really glad to be here, and it's been great fun. It's been a warm welcome back from everybody, and I've really enjoyed it. And I'm just going to aim to get, better and stronger, both physically and in the commentary box over the next months ahead, and hopefully continue to go from strength to strength. That's my plan, Alex, anyway.
Glad to hear it. And what was that moment like then, turning up to Ali Pali again for that first session back?
It was quite emotional, to be honest, yeah. Just to walk back into the place. But I think a lot of people felt that, the fans that have been here, they missed it last year, and they felt quite emotional. And the players too, felt emotional that the fans were back. I think, everybody feels emotional when they walk back into this place, because it's going to be at least a year since you were last here for players, fans, broadcasters, and everybody. Very similar to the World Match Play, really. These are iconic venues in the world of darts, and it's a real thrill to be back here, and I'm so glad the tournament's gone well. There's been one or two downsides, haven't they? Obviously, with the positive COVID test, but I think once again those disappointments have been, quickly covered over by the brilliance of the players still left in the tournament.
Yeah, we should touch on those positive cases. Vincent van der Voort, Michael van Gerwen, Dave Chisnall all testing positive and unfortunately having to pull out of the event. What was the reaction like in the press room when you're seeing those names have to exit?
Well, with Michael van Gerwen in particular, there was disappointment, when Vincent was the first player to return a positive test. But, when it's one of the biggest names in the world of darts and in the world of sport, to be fair, Michael van Gerwen, when it was announced to the media in the press room, there was complete silence. You couldn't call it shock because, when there'd been a positive test just before with Vincent, it was always a possibility. But people were stunned that Michael would be no longer in the tournament. And obviously it was a great disappointment because everybody wants to see Michael van Gerwen play, particularly at the World Championship. And for Michael himself, obviously we have the utmost sympathy with him because the tournament means more than any other for every player. But Michael has laid that on the line, time and time again about how much story sets by the World Championship, and he would swap all his titles for more World Championships. And so it was awful for him, and we wish him the very best of luck in his recovery, and we hope to see him playing at his very best in 2022.
Definitely. Well, one player who's still on course for the title is Gerwyn Price, and he said he felt the tournament should be postponed. He's since gone back on that statement. Has the atmosphere changed at all this week with the players? Have they been more careful interacting with less people?
I'm not sure how the players are, what they're doing themselves. Obviously, we only see them when they're here, but you would think they would become pretty cautious, wouldn't you? That because nobody wants to return a positive test at any stage in the tournament, but particularly as you get to the real business end as we are now, fast approaching the quarterfinals and beyond. So you'd assume that the players will be being very cautious, going about their business very carefully. I know players have different views, and I know some players will think, well, the tournament won't have quite the same value because Michael wasn't able to, play his way through the tournament and be eliminated in the traditional manner, if you like. But I think at the end of it all, people will eventually remember what happened on the hockey rather than what happened behind the scenes. I was talking to some of the guys here this afternoon, and we're talking about back in 2008, if you follow the golf, Tiger Woods was the man back then. But he didn't play at the Open Golf Championship because he was badly injured. He had a badly damaged knee. And the tournament was won by Padraig Harrington, the Irishman. But nobody says now, that Open, Padraig, he won the Open, and it was a good tournament, an exciting Open, and Padraig Harrington won it fair and square, and people remember him for winning the Open. They don't put an asterisk by it and say Tiger didn't play. And, whichever the players we've got left, and a lot of them played brilliantly, haven't they, by the way? The world champion himself, Gerwyn Price, amongst them, Michael Smith. What can you say about that performance last night? But this afternoon also, Luke Humphries, exceptional performance. And whoever goes on to win the title, I think, will have deserved it. And I'm sure we'll have a great champion on January the 3rd.
That's a fair point. The players are stepping up, and talking about recent games that we've seen, I guess in more normal times we'd see the players milling around the press room and backstage. But have you had a chance to ask Callum Ridds if he likes Nuki Brown yet?
actually, to be fair. I'm thrilled to see him doing so well. As I was saying in the commentary the other day, he really is my kind of bloke. I just love he just, in these days when sport is all about, sharp suits and sanitised sound bites and, social media accounts managed by other people, I just think Callum Ridge is one for all of us. Just an ordinary bloke. Just an ordinary bloke that's got a talent at darts, and a sort of like, he does look like he's just sort of wandered into the venue. Someone's given him 3 darts, and he's gone up onto stage and started chucking them quite brilliantly, by the way, hasn't he? So, and he deserves a Nuki Brown, probably more than one actually. And I'm sure, by the end of the tournament, he'll be hoping to toast himself in Nuki Brown, and he'll have deserved it, and I'll join him in doing so.
Definitely. Well, this afternoon you commentated on the Mervyn King Raymond Smith match, a match which went the full 7 sets. Merv coming from behind to win. What qualities in Merv's game are you most impressed with? Because few can match his longevity in the game.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, and that's the thing, isn't it? As I was saying to Mark Webster this afternoon, we always remember the winners of World Championships, but just to be in the World Championship is an achievement, and particularly to be in it year in, year out. Everyone loves Steve Beaton, and it's great to see Steve 31 World Championships, but Merv isn't far behind, and that is because of his longevity is quite exceptional, isn't it? You have to go way back towards the turn of the last century, 97, when he was first in the World Championship in the BBO. So, what's that, over 25 years, isn't it? I mean, it's amazing, really. And I think it's based really on his tenacity, hard work, and dogged determination, isn't it? He never knows or never thinks that the game is up at any stage during a game. However bad the deficit is, Merv still believes he can win, and it's a great characteristic to have. And he's proved that characteristic has served him well in this tournament twice now, hasn't he, against Ryan Joyce and Raymond Smith. And, who knows? Maybe this will be Mervyn King's year. He's certainly the comeback king, isn't he?
We shall see. Well, looking ahead, we're talking, as I said, before the last 3 fourth-round games, so we can only look ahead to one of the quarterfinals at the moment, but what quarterfinal it promises to be, Gerwyn Price, Michael Smith. How do you see that one going?
Well, I mean, it's one to salivate over, isn't it? I mean, it's a magical matchup. I think, the question here for me is, can Michael Smith replicate, or in any way come close to replicating the way he played against Johnny Clayton? Because, human beings, even great artists like Michael Smith, are not 100% consistent. We don't do the same thing every day. None of us do. We're not a very reliable species as human beings. Because sometimes we write up a player who's played badly and think he'll play badly again, and then he plays well. But, it's difficult to forget what Michael Smith did. I mean, it's such a magical performance. Oh, I'd love to see Michael Smith go on and win the big one, but for me, I think, to be honest, he's going to do well to replicate that level of performance, and he would probably have to dethrone Gerwyn Price. So I've been very impressed with that. I know he got in the pickle against Kim Hybrex, but the thing about Gerwyn is that when he's in trouble, he knows how to get himself out of it. Even last year, there were matches when you thought he's in trouble here, and he found a way to get through. I think he's a great world champion. And if you ask me who I think will win, I think Gerwyn Price is more likely to win that game than Michael Smith. I'm by no means writing Michael off, but for me, I think Gerwyn will win that game.
Well, the next Sky event will be the Premier League in February. Touchwood, it will be good to go with the full crowds packing out the arenas again. I won't ask you for a lineup because we'll be here all day, but can you give us one name who maybe hasn't played in it before that you'd like to see get a chance?
Alan Ridge. I don't know. I'm not sure what the format will be. Will they go with contenders or challengers again? Probably not. But if they did in Newcastle, Ridge would be belting, wouldn't he? I'm not sure. I know people judge Fallon Sherrick. They constantly swing one way and the other on one match or one performance, which isn't the best way to judge anybody. She's kind of disappeared off the radar again. But I don't think that can be completely dismissed out of hand just because she lost to Steve Beat. She's still box office. So I wouldn't completely write Fallon Sherrick out of the equation. And of course, as is normal, Alex, we get into this tournament and somebody has done something, haven't they? And forced their way into the reckoning. I mean, I go back and I remember Andrew Hamilton getting to the final here and forcing his way into the Premier League, where he played well and got to the semi-final, by the way. But I mean, who's to say that Ridge won't get to the final and force his way into it? And there are other players. Luke Humphries, of course, he was talking after the match today to Michael Bridge on Sky about wanting to be in the Premier League and believing he could be in it and do well, and I think he would do well. When he was a contender, you'll probably remember, he was the first contender or challenger to win a match when he beat Gary Anderson in Exeter. It all seems so long ago now, doesn't it, with what's happened in the world? But I think Luke can throw his hat into the ring. Certainly, if he got to the final, his hat would be definitely in the Premier League ring. So I think really what we need to do here is just wait and let the dust settle after this tournament, because normally they announce it on the same night as the final. So I'm not sure if that's their plan again this year, but as you rightly said, everything's a little bit up in the air in the moment. So, we'd all be guessing more than usual, I think. But at the end of this tournament, maybe the picture will become clearer, Alex.
Hopefully it'll be good to go. Well, I've got a few listener questions before I let you go. The first one comes from Mark Dubbridge. He says, can you ask Rod if he still has his cowboy hat in the boot of his car?
I've still got it, but it's not in the boot of my car. I probably last wore it when Mark Dubbridge was in the semi-final of the World Championship back at the Circus Tavern in 2005. Another one of Mardell's semi-final defeats, by the way.
And your fellow commentator Chris Murphy says to ask you, what sort of thing is happening here?
Yeah. Those of us who know me and Chris, you're probably too young to remember, but there was a famous documentary about the former England football manager Graham Taylor called The Impossible Job. And a lot of these quotes are from what Graham Taylor said during England's unsuccessful campaign to reach the World Cup finals in 1994. So that's what Chris is alluding to there. So if you hear what sort of thing is happening here in commentary, that's the source of that line.
Good to know. Well, Kevin Fitzpatrick says he's always been a massive fan of yours, and he's glad to hear that you're back to good health. He's also a massive rugby league fan, and Rod used to front the league back chat every week and he loved it. Does he still keep up to date with all things rugby league, and will you front programming again?
I do keep up to date with all the rugby league. Yeah, it's very kind of Kevin to say that. It's very kind of him. I still follow the rugby league. I was doing a lot of rugby league and a lot of darts, but in the end I moved firmly into the darting camp, and that's where I've stayed really for the last few years. And I thoroughly enjoy it. I love the darts, and that's how I see things going for the next few years. Hopefully, touch wood, that get back into the darts, get into the full swing of it, and carry on with the darts. That's what I'm hoping.
The last one comes from Carl Fletcher, and I think we probably asked you this before, but it might have changed your answer since you've come back to commentating. But if you could pick just one golden moment from your time commentating on darts, what would it be?
Well, that's a good point you made. I mean, just being back here has been great. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be anywhere, to be honest. But in terms of darting commentary and darting moments, the Fallon Sherritt one when she beat Ted Evans was epic, and being part of something that was obviously a history-making moment in the world of sport was very exciting. But when Phil Taylor won his last match play, when he was winding down to retirement, because that was incredible. I still think that's one of the most incredible things I've seen in the world of sport, because if we remember, he was clearly winding down and in decline and given next to no chance of winning that tournament, and then he dispatched some of the finest players in the world, culminating in Peter Wright in the final, having beaten Van Gerwen and Van Barneveld along the way, and beat Peter Wright in that final. And it was just a real great moment to be part of when Taylor won that. And of course, he almost finished it by topping that by winning the Worlds when Rob Cross beat him. But those are the two sort of tournaments and moments that stick out: the Sherritt win over Evans and the Taylor win in his last match play.
Some good moments. Well, hopefully there's going to be more to come as well. Rod, it's a pleasure to catch up with you. Appreciate you taking the time out while you're at Ali Pally, and wish you all the best for the rest of the tournament.
Absolutely no problem at all. Back to annoying Mardell now.
Thanks again to Rod for joining us now, continuing our chat about the PDC World Championship. And to off the hockey matters, we have to touch on the 3 positive COVID-19 tests that we've had this week for Vincent van der Voort, Michael van Gerwen and Dave Chisnell, all 3 having to withdraw during the last 32 before they played their last 32 matches this week. What was your reaction when you saw the news?
Part of me was surprised that we made it as far in the tournament without having anyone have to pull out due to COVID. And another part of me was surprised that it was only 3 players. Granted, you can also throw in Raymond van Barneveld and Danny Noppert, possibly others, but at least those 2 that we know of who announced positive tests after losing. But I think it was just inevitable. As we're seeing with Omicron, it's highly transmittable. Early signs so far seem to show that it's not as severe, especially for persons who are younger and are vaccinated and boosted compared to previous variants. But it still is a dangerous disease, especially for older people and for unvaccinated people. And until we have fully under control, until we fully know what to do, erring on the side of caution does seem to be the right call. And it's unfortunate, but those 3 players had positive tests, and I think the right call was to make them withdraw. because you don't want to risk spreading it to the crowd. You don't want to risk spreading it to the other players and the match officials on stage. And because the more people it spreads to, the more risk it has of spreading to someone who it's a real risk to, in whether it's the players' families or other friends that they're going to be seeing during the holidays. We've seen this in other tournaments, not mid-tournament, but, well, actually we did see it in the Challenge Tour mid-tournament, but that was a different situation. But beyond that, we haven't seen it happen mid-tournament. We've seen people have to withdraw the day of or the day before due to COVID, and I think we will see that going forward for some time. It does to some extent diminish the tournament, but it's a diminishment that we knew was always a risk and we were likely to see happen. And all three of those players should be back. I mean, Van Geuren and Chizzy's rankings mean they will be back. Van der Voort, you would think, would still be in the top 32 next year. Probably will be. He's playing really well. And they'll want to make it right next year. Look at Martijn Kleermaker, who had to pull out last year. It's a disappointing situation, but he more than made it right this year, getting all the way to the last 16 on what became his debut. He was obviously hungry, and we know Van Geuren will be hungry. We expect that Chizzy and Van der Voort will be as well, and hopefully they'll come back next year and make up for lost time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a massive shame, wasn't it, for all three players to miss out, not just for the tournament, as you say, but for the fans as well that were watching at home, but for the fans that bought tickets to watch the darts as well. They've gone from watching 3 games to 2 games in the session. So we've seen a few of the sessions this week cut back from 3 to 2 games, a few shorter sessions. But of course, most important of all, it is the players themselves that have tested positive, because this is the biggest tournament of the year. It is the pinnacle in darts to become the world champion, not just to lift that trophy, the 500 grand for winning it. That's pretty handy as well. You touched on the rankings as well. How's that going to impact things for the next 12 months, even 2 years with the 2-year ranking system that we have in place, especially Michael Van Geuren as well. He was defending runners-up money from 2 years ago. He's not been able to do that now because he's had to withdraw. What's that going to do for his bid to become world number 1? Well, it's going to put him in a tricky position to try and do it next year, particularly the first half, but even into the second half of next year. It is hard to see him getting that world number 1 spot back in the next 12 months. But yeah, I mean, it's a shame for all 3 players involved. And don't forget the 3 players that we lost out on before the start of the tournament. I don't think either of them, any of the 3 were because of positive cases, but I think they were, all 3 of them were to do with the restrictions that we've got in place because of this virus. So it's had an impact before the tournament, during the tournament, and to lose 3 players in 3 days was, yeah, it's not something you want to see, is it? And you've got to say, maybe surprising we've not seen it yet in a big tournament like this. We've seen it during the tournament, as you say, with Martijn Kleermaker before he'd played a game. But with these 3 players, we'd seen them all on the stage. We'd seen them win their first game before the Christmas break. And in particular, with Vincent and Michael, you know, they've stayed in the UK during Christmas. They've sacrificed that family time during the holidays to keep themselves in the tournament, and they've come back after the Christmas break and both tested positive and had to pull out. It's got to be heartbreaking, sickening for them players in particular as well. But we'll see how this follows into next year, because I'm sure that the PDC will look at their protocols in place for this year. We've had the crowds come back, and we've seen more positive cases because the cases are on the rise at the moment. So I'm sure that is something that they will look at, and the situation with the virus is something that darts, that the world is going to have to live with going into 2022, and how will that impact things in the darts. I don't think we've seen the last of it, but this has certainly made a big impact on the event. And Michael Van Geuren in particular, the world number 3, one of the biggest names in darts, to miss out, to not lose on the Oki, his World Championship bid this year, I think that is going to take some time for him to get over.
We barely mentioned the Premier League during the Worlds. I think we only talked about it once over the last few months, but the field we expect will be announced after Monday's final. Maybe they'll do the same thing as last year and leave one of those spots open for the Masters. But as things stand right now, what's your lineup for the Premier League?
I think a lot will depend on the format for next year's Premier League. Last year it went back to 10 players. We had 2 years of the challengers and the contenders. Hopefully we're going to have the continued return of crowds next year, and maybe we'll see that aspect of the contenders stroke challengers return. I was thinking this was before the last 16. My view on it's changed actually over the last couple of days, but I was thinking 8 players and then have 2 contenders each night. I don't know whether they were going to play each other or play one of the 8 full players in the Premier League, but that was my idea to begin with. But given what we've seen over the last couple of days, I think we are looking towards a 10-player lineup, and the 8 players that I had locked in before the last 16, Gerwyn Price, Peter Wright, Michael Van Gerwen, James Wade, they were the top 4. Johnny Clayton, the defending champion, I don't think he needs John McDonald to tell him that he's going to be in the field again next year. Jose de Souza, I think he was kind of on the borderline, but I think getting to the final last year, a couple of quarterfinals on TV as well this year, I think has probably done him just enough to get in. Dimitri van der Berg, another one who I had on the borderline, but getting to the World Match Play final, and how well he played in the Premier League last year without getting in the playoffs. He had a lot of ton plus averages, so I expect him to be in the field again, despite that early exit in the World Championship. And Rob Cross as well. Okay, he got eliminated from the Premier League. I think that's 2 years in a row now, but he did win that European Championship, and it looks like he is heading back towards his best. So for me, I think Rob Cross was in there, and that left me with 2 spots. As I said, I thought we might see the contenders come back, but I think at the minute we're looking towards Michael Smith getting back in. The way that he performed against Johnny Clayton to get that big win on TV, I think has put him well in contention now to get back in the Premier League. And the last spot, this is a tough one for me, and looking at the lineup that we've got for the quarterfinals, you could maybe say it's a shootout for the Premier League spot. I'm not quite sure at the moment, but it could end up being one, and that is between Gary Anderson and Luke Humphries. Those two are going to play on New Year's Day. Gary Anderson is going to be the big favourite at the moment for that Premier League spot, given the stature that he's got in the game. He is a star name, but if Luke Humphries can turn him over in the quarterfinals, he's spoken about it in his interviews even today. He wants to be in the Premier League. He's made a final on TV this year. He's picked up some scalps. One more big scalp against Gary Anderson, I think that might just get him over the line. But you've also got to say as well, the other players that are still left in the World Championship, if we see someone like Callum Ridds or Mervyn King make the final, I think it's hard to look past someone getting in the world final and not being in the field. I think that's only happened maybe twice before. Phil Taylor, when he retired after getting to the final, and Kirk Shepherd 2008. I can't remember too many other occasions where someone's got to the World Championship final and not been involved in the Premier League. So they're still in the mix. They've probably got more work to do. But for me, I'm looking at my last 2 spots, Michael Smith and then the winner of Gary Anderson, Luke Humphries. I think that's going to be my 10.
Ooh, I think we're in a little bit of disagreement here because I think Gary Anderson's in just because of the name power. But whether his season has earned it, I think is a different story. I agree with you that on what we've seen this year, it would make sense for that to be a straight shootout, but for the name recognition of Gary Anderson and the name power of Gary Anderson. And that's why I think Gary Anderson is in. Even if he wasn't in before the World Championships, making the quarterfinals should be enough that he will be in because he is Gary Anderson. And, you go back, Adrian Lewis stayed in an extra year because he was still in the top 10 and he had that name power. Raymond van Barneveld, even after he fell out of the top 10 and fell out of the top 20, down to, I think, number 27, still got in because of the name power. I don't think Gary Anderson would get that same treatment. I think he'd be treated like Adrian Lewis, that if he drops out of that top 16 or top 20, he would miss out, which meant there was a chance that if he didn't go on a run at last year's World, he would miss out. But he's Gary Anderson. I think he's in by making the quarterfinals if he wasn't in already. Beyond Gary, which I think is the only thing we disagree on, Gerwyn Price obviously in, Peter Wright obviously in, Michael Van Gerwen obviously in, James Wade, even if he drops out of the top 4, UK Open champion obviously in, and Johnny Clayton, I can give a few different reasons why he's obviously in, not least of which he's the defending Premier League champion. That takes care of 6 spots, and Rob Cross as the European champion in. So that's 7 spots. I think Dimitri van den Berg is still in as well. Yes, he lost in the first round of Worlds, but he's made 2 televised finals this year, and it's not like he played himself out with that performance in the first round. He played very well. He averaged 102. He just ran into some heroic finishing from Florian Hempel and lost to someone who on the day wasn't beatable. Dimitri van den Berg is in. That's 8 spots, and that leaves 2 that are still up for grabs. Jose de Souza, I think by virtue of having made the final last year in the Premier League, is in, but there's that chance that if we see results go against him, that he's the player I think could fall out, not Gary Anderson. I think if we see Mervyn King or Luke Humphries win the title, Michael Smith make the semifinals or final, then I could see it being Jose de Sousa who drops out. But as of today, he's in. Results would have to go against him. And that leaves one spot that's up for grabs. I think it's Michael Smith's to lose. And if Michael Smith beats Gerwyn Price, I think he hasn't lost it. And then it becomes Jose de Sousa who could fall out if someone else wins the title. But I think Michael Smith is currently in that last spot. But Mervyn King and Luke Humphries and Callan Ridds, they know a world title would get them in. A final probably gets Mervyn King and Luke Humphries in. I don't know if it gets Callan Ridds in, but there's still a lot to play for. And just one more thing on your suggestion of having those 8 players and 2 challengers at a given night. I like that idea, but not for the first stage. How about for the second stage? Go back to it being best out of 12 as opposed to best out of 14, but use that extra time to have an extra match between 2 challengers so that the fans still get those 5 matches a night. They just get to see 2 additional players who are given that chance to shine.
Well, there you go, Eddie and Barry Hearn. There's a few ideas for the Premier League for next year if you haven't made up your mind already. Well, here's our next guest. Here's our chat with the darts YouTuber, the darts referee, Jack Langston.
I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Jack Langston, better known as the darts referee. Thanks for the time, Jack. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, mate. Yeah, it is. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. And being known as the darts referee kind of gives away your background in darts. But before you got into refereeing, when did you first discover darts? What got you interested in it?
When I was growing up, my granddad used to play, so I used to watch a lot of darts with him and stuff. And like some of my earliest memories is being in my granddad's shed, watching him play darts or watching darts at his house or something. So I've just kind of grown up with it always around me. And yeah, I guess that's why I am where I am now.
We'll come on to talk about your upcoming entry into Q School, but on the playing side of things, have you always played the game as well, or have you had any breaks from playing?
I had loads of breaks, yeah. I played a lot as a kid. I then kind of got bored. I mean, I played county youth and stuff till I was about 15, 16. Then got bored and went and done some other things, and then started playing again when I was about 18. And then again, got bored again, started doing other things and the different interests. And the playing side was never something that I was that interested in. I enjoyed playing, but not overly, not loads, but the marking and just being involved in darts has always been an interest in me. So yeah, not playing loads, but always been involved somewhere or somehow.
Well, let's go on to that side then. From playing to then getting involved at the other side of the hockey as a referee and a marker, what was it that made you want to pursue that side of the game?
So I was always good at it. It was something that I was just naturally, I feel like I was naturally good at. I used to play darts a lot with a guy called Colin near where I live, and him and another guy and me. So we used to practice a lot, and we always played Winner Stays On, and those two they're like good players in the area. So when I'm like 11, 12, 13 years old, playing Winner Stays On against them, I just got battered all the time. They just beat me all the time, so I'd always be on the front board. So yeah, I got very, very good at talking really early, and it wasn't until I was probably about 16, 17, I was playing darts regularly, and I had dartitis, and I had that for about 2 years. And I just got to the point where I was like, if I'm ever going to make it in darts, it's not going to be playing probably. It's going to be doing the math side of things, doing the referees and the marking. So I just decided to start doing that. And I kind of got a bit lucky, spoke to the right people at the right time, and managed to find a way into it.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some of our listeners who might one day want to go down the same route as you did in becoming a marker or a referee. Talk us through that journey from starting out to then getting involved with the PDC like you did.
Well, it was, like I said, it was right place, right time. I went to go and watch a darts exhibition. It was a Steve Beaton exhibition, and I was 17 at the time. And I said to the guy, like, I'm coming, I'm happy to pay, but could I do the marking? And obviously it was like, yeah, of course you can. Just no one else turns up and says, please can I mark when it comes to a game of darts. So yeah, they let me mark the whole night. And I spoke to one of the people who was with Steve, who happened to be a referee or a marker on the Pro Tour. And he just told me the right people to go and speak to, and I found them on Facebook, tracked them down. I was like, I want to come and do this. Can you help me out? So they give me a trial go on the Pro Tour in Crawley, and that was it. 6 years later, I was still doing it, and yeah, but it was very much right place, right time. But I think nowadays it's a little bit easier to get into, or there's definitely like clear avenues of how to get into it now.
Well, we put out on our Twitter that we were going to have you on the show, and our listeners have sent in their own questions. That the first one comes from Dartscast. He says, "What was your most controversial moment that he's refereed?"
I've never really had any really controversial ones. You get the odd time when someone decides that they want to go for a toilet break during a leg, and it's like you don't know if the opponent's okay with that, if it's actually if they're allowed to do that, stuff like that. I've had a few times. I've had once where Dean Winstanley's been playing and his points come out during a match, and his point was stuck in the board, and his dart had bounced out with the point was still there, and it's like things like that, like just trying to work out what the ruling is then and there. Like it makes sense when you look back at it, but when you're in the moment, you've got to make a ruling then and then stick to it and try and hope that you're right. But there's not a lot that really is all that controversial, really. You just kind of take everything as it goes, and just hope that you don't annoy anyone, you don't wind anyone up, and you've made the right decisions while you're doing it, really.
And the next one comes from George Dobson. He says, "What was your favourite moment of your darts career so far?"
Favourite moment of my darts career? I captain a side on a Friday, which I'm very proud of. I've managed to put together a real decent team. So I mean, only the last sort of six to 8 months I've started playing. So maybe they might let me play next season whenever we're allowed to go back and play league darts again. But yeah, I've put together a nice little team on a Friday, and I've got lots and lots of mates involved. So yeah, I'd say probably my proudest moment is just being a part of that, really, putting that together and having a good team, winning trophies and stuff like that.
Always good. And the next one comes from Matt Johnson, who said he'd like to get your thoughts on the ADC announcement. I don't know if you saw that over the weekend or the last few days.
Yeah, no, I do like it. I was speaking to Steve Brown about it yesterday, actually, and yeah, I definitely think it's an improvement on Mad. I mean, I wasn't a massive fan of the name Mad. So I'm glad they've changed it, and it sounds more like a darts organisation now, I think. It just sounds more realistic. I think Mad sounded a little bit gimmicky. It sounds like they mean some business and they're gonna make some waves in the darts world. So hopefully that is the case. Looking forward to seeing how they get on.
We shall see. Well, the last of our listener questions comes from Charlie Gray. He's got two questions. He says, "How nervous are you going to Q School, and what's it like being an ambassador for autism awareness in darts?"
Let's talk about autism awareness first. Yeah, very, very, very proud. It's something that actually just through knowing Charlie was how I sort of got into it. I'd never really met anyone who had autism until I met Charlie probably 5 or 6 years ago playing darts. And yeah, I'm extremely proud to be involved. I'm extremely proud that people actually wanted me to be involved in the first place. And yeah, any way I can help or anything I can do, I'm all for it. Charlie's one of the nicest guys I've ever met in darts. So if it's going to improve anything or improve anyone's lives or anything like that, if it's something I can do, I'm all for it. But being nervous, I'm not really nervous about Q School. So I'm not nervous about playing Q School because I know my standards. I know why I'm going there, and yeah, but so I'm not really nervous about playing, but I'm a little bit nervous about potentially what people might think about me playing if people don't understand the full reason why I'm going there. If that makes sense, because I'm not silly. I know I'm not good enough to earn a tour card, but I could be good enough to win a few games. I just don't know. So I'm not really nervous about playing, but potentially a little bit nervous about what people might think in like after and stuff, or if I play really badly, to be honest.
Well, let's get on to the reasons why you're going to Q School. A lot of our listeners will know you from your YouTube channel, The Darts Referee, which you started a little over 2 years ago now. What have those 2 years been like covering darts on that platform?
It's been really fun. Yeah, it's something that I never expected would ever take off. I think when I first started, I had a goal set, and I set myself where I could get maybe 2,000, 3,000 subscribers in my first year. I think I'd done like I don't know, 15, 16,000, something like that. And it was just something that I decided 1 minute. The real reason why I started it was because I had this computer that I bought. I spent loads of money on a computer just to play Fortnite. That was the only reason why I had this computer. And I kind of got to a point where I was like, I feel like I should do more with it. So I got some editing software, and I'd had a YouTube channel before playing video games, and I thought I'll do another channel because I've got all the I've got everything that I need to make a channel. I just need to just put some effort into it and try it. So I just went for it, and I never expected it to do what it has done. I'm very proud of some of the stuff I've done, and it's really good. It's good. It's fun.
Well, it's turned into one of the most popular channels out there for darts. What do you make of the darts YouTube scene right now from when you started a couple of years ago to now? Has it grown in that time?
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah. Definitely a lot bigger now. I just think, I think when I first started, you had Darts Planet were doing some bits. You had a couple of reviewers who were doing some just reviews and stuff. But I think just the general sort of stuff that you watch on YouTube daily, whatever it is kind of starting to be more related to darts. People are starting to realise that you can make videos about anything in darts, and if you've got a good idea, it'll probably work. So you might as well go for it. But yeah, it's just grown loads really, and I think I just hit the timing perfectly, to be honest. So yeah.
Well, it's around this time of year while the Worlds is going on. We notice a lot more interest in darts. Is it the same on YouTube? Do you notice the views going up for your videos around this time?
Oh yeah, massively. So YouTube is for me. I don't know about other channels, but for me, my views go mental in January. I think that's just because of the after the Worlds hype, and people start searching for darts content on YouTube. And then also there's a lot of hype around Q Score and stuff. So people trying to find out what's going on there. But yeah, so for me, as far as my analytics go, January is by far my biggest month. It would make sense that December would be, but it's not. It's just January, and by a fair amount as well.
Well, we're talking just before the end of the third round at Ali Pali off the Oki. A lot of debate about the recent positive cases for the virus. We've had 3 players have to withdraw mid-event over the last 3 days. What's been your take on it?
I don't think there's a correct answer, but at the same time, I don't think that you can. I don't think it can be postponed. I don't think you can replace the players. I think you just have to keep trying to get the players to stay safe themselves, so that they can play in the event. And if they have a positive test, then I guess they just got to hand the bye to the other player. I just don't see any way around it. I just think if you're a dart player at the moment and you're in the third or the fourth round, whatever round you're up to, I think the fourth round's next, and you know there's a potential £500,000 at the end of the week, I'd just stay in for that week maybe. But yeah, I don't see a way of fixing it or a way of getting around it. It's just one of those things, really. It's just part of life at the moment.
Well, on the Oki, Going Price's defence is still on, but we've still got Peter Wright, Johnny Clayton, among others, bidding to end his reign. Who do you think is going to lift the title on January the 3rd?
So I've said Going Price from the very beginning. I thought it was going to be a Going Price Van Gogh final. Obviously, that's not going to happen anymore. So I'm still going to go with Going Price. I'd like to see Ryan Searle win it. I think out of everyone left in the tournament, he's the person who I'd like to see win it the most. But I think it's silly to go against Price or Wright, really. One of those two probably going to win it, so I'm going to go with Price, but I'd like to see Searle win it.
Not a bad choice. Well, we'll finish up back to Q School just less than 2 weeks before it starts now. How has the preparation gone so far, and what is the plan for the next 2 weeks leading up to it to get yourself ready?
So preparation, it's been very, very up and down. I started the year off with this idea in mind, throwing high 30 averages, and that's a 3 dart average, not a 1 dart average. Throwing high 30 averages, which is not great especially if you want to become a good player. That's not quite up to scratch to go to Q school. And I just I had a few months where I wasn't really good, and then I had a break for a few months because I burnt myself out from doing like 2-3 hours a day. I just had enough, and I was like, actually, I don't like this idea anymore. I'm not going to do it anymore. So I had a few months off, and then I started again once the lockdown sort of relaxed and tournaments started again. Then I started playing darts properly again, and it went really good for about 2 or 3 months. I was playing really well, and I was starting to think that if I keep improving at the way that I am, by January I'm going to be a really good dart player maybe. But obviously that's not how darts works. I've been up and down the last few months. I can't really put my finger on anything. I don't really know why. But some days I turn up and I play well. Some days I turn up and I'm rubbish. So I'm kind of hoping that when I get to Q school and the pressure's on a little bit, because I seem to do a little bit better when there's a bit more pressure on me. Hoping that I turn up or somewhat turn up. But I've just got no idea. Like, I've got absolutely no idea. I don't know if I'm going to turn up and completely crumble and not even be able to hit the board properly because I'm so nervous, or I'm going to turn up and I'm going to play the best darts of my life. I've got no idea. Absolutely no idea. But we shall see. Hopefully it's not too bad.
No, definitely not. Well, you're living the dream of a lot of darts players. They want to get to Q school and test themselves. What are you most looking forward to about the whole experience? And is there anyone that you'd most like to draw and have a go at?
I don't really know, because a lot of the main players I think of would be going straight into the second stage. Like, I think everyone wants to see me versus Edgar for sure. If that's ever a thing, whether he gets a tour card and I'll do it another time, or if he doesn't get through Q school and me and him meet on the challenge tour, whatever it is, I definitely think a lot of people would like to see me versus Edgar. I mean, he's gonna batter me. I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to beat him, because I'm definitely not. But I think a lot of people would like to see that. But away from the playing and away from that sort of stuff, I'm looking forward to just trying to make a good video, make a good piece of content out of the whole experience, and show that you can get a bit better. And I wanted to show more of like a first-hand experience of what it's like going there and just how it all works and what you do with your evenings and your mornings and stuff like that, and just try and film a lot, see how it goes. Hopefully make a good video out of it, and hopefully have a good time and enjoy myself, really.
Well, we're all looking forward to seeing it. Jack, pleasure to chat to you. Wish you all the best for the next few weeks with the last bit of prep for Q school, and when Q school comes around as well. Hope it all goes well for you.
Thank you very much. Cheers for having me.
Thanks again to Jack for joining us, and we'll finish up the show with our predictions for the quarterfinals. But of course, we've got to touch on our predictions from our last show. We were making our picks on who we thought would make the quarterfinals from the last 32 lineup. Burton, we'll start with you. How many players did you manage to get right into the quarterfinals?
Did I get any right into the quarterfinals?
Well, your tip to win the title, of course, going price, you did predict to get through. Of course, we have to mention one of your players had the positive COVID-19 test, Michael Van Goen, so we'll let you off that one. He didn't actually lose on the hockey. Myself, though, I think I've got to give myself a bit of a pat on the back. 6 out of 8 for me, so I'm pretty happy with that. But both of us, we've got to make a new pick for who we think's going to lose to Going Price in the final, if we are still picking Going Price to win the final, of course. So we'll come on to that in a moment, but we'll start with the predictions for the quarterfinals, and let's work our way from the top to the bottom of the draw. Which 4 have you got going through to the semi-finals, and can you give us some scores as well?
Yeah, you said going from top to bottom, but I was going to go from bottom to top. But I'll do as you say. I'll follow your rules, and I'll say that I have a new world champion because I'm picking Michael Smith to win the match. Everything that we've seen so far this tournament points to Michael Smith. That probably means, especially since I'm now picking Michael Smith, that it's Gezi who's going to win the match to nil. But it just feels like Michael Smith's year. Granted, we've said that before. Last year felt like Chizzy's year after he beat Michael Van Goen. But even still, there was that little niggling in the back of your head of, can he string together multiple matches like that, which he would have needed to lift the title. You would think he would have needed to lift the title. Michael Smith has strung together matches like that. His first match against Ron Muhlenkamp, brilliant. His second match against Willie O'Connor, brilliant at times, although did give O'Connor some chances. And then that Johnny Clayton match, just brilliant throughout, even though he did lose 3 sets. He looks the better player. I'm going Michael Smith to win the match, and I'm going to go 5-2. I think he wins it fairly comfortably, which maybe he needs to be in order to get over the line. James Wade against Mervyn King. Ooh, this is a tough one. King just hasn't looked convincing. Neither has Wade, but Wade did look more convincing against Clearmaker. I think just a little bit of extra class. I'll go Wade to win 5-2. Peter Wright against Callan Ritz. I think Callan's run comes to an end. Peter Wright, he really was brilliant against Ryan Searle. Granted, Searle played miserably, as bad as we've ever seen from Searle on the big stage, but Peter Wright just stuck in there and blew him out of the water. I think he's going to just have enough for Callan Ritz. The only thing that goes against Callan Ritz, and it's why I'm picking Peter Wright, is he hasn't been tested yet. Had he been tested, I think maybe he would get over the line here. But I think that having been tested is the X factor here. And Peter Wright was tested in his second match against the Aussie Damon Hedda. I think that's going to be the difference. I'm going to go Peter Wright to win at 5-3. And then Luke Humphries, Gary Anderson. I think Luke finally gets a semifinal after losing a couple quarterfinals. I think he goes all the way, but I think Luke Humphries gets over the line 5-4.
Well, I've got similar for 3 of the 4 quarterfinals. I'll start from the top of the draw with Gerwyn Price against Michael Smith. And I forgot to mention it in our first question that we started the show with, but they deserve a mention, and that is the guys at Darting Promotions, because Michael Smith signed up with them at the start of this year, and they're the guys that also look after Callan Ritz, Luke Woodhouse, Yella Klassen, among other players as well. But we've seen that they've definitely played a part this year in Michael's changing attitude, his demeanour on the hockey, and who knows, as you say, you're tipping him to now go all the way. Could this be the time that we finally see him land that big one and win the world title? They deserve a bit of credit, but I do think this is going to go Gerwyn Price's way. I'm going to stick with my guns from the start of the tournament and stick with Gerwyn Price, but I do think, like you, I think we are in for a cracker of a quarterfinal between these two players, but I do think it is going to be Gerwyn Price that gets over the line. I'm going to go 5-3 to the defending champion. I think he's going to continue his run towards the title. Underneath that, we've got the quarter which had all of your dark horses in it, and we've got a pair of dark horses in that quarterfinal, haven't we? James Wade against Mervyn King is the quarterfinal that I was hoping for when we got to the last 32. The 2 players that have had 50 plus meetings between them, never at the World Championship, and both are eyeing it up as a big opportunity to get to the semi-finals. Like you, I do think it is going to be James Wade that gets over the line. Neither of them have shown the big averages so far, but I think this one is going to be a scrap. But like you, I'm going 5-2 as well to James Wade. Working our way down, Peter Wright against Callan Ritz. Now, this is probably the hardest one to call if I'm going to try and be a neutral, because, as we know, Peter Wright's my favourite player. But Callan Ritz, he's been proudly wearing the weekly Dartscast logo on his shirt for the last 9 or so months. So it's a hard one to call. I'm going to get it to 9 sets, though. I think Callan Ritz, like you, I'm a little bit concerned he's not been properly tested. He's not gone to a 4-2 or a 3-1 or a 3-2 or a 4-3. But I think he is going to go to the distance in this one with Peter Wright. And I think that experience is probably just going to be the only difference in this one. But Callan Ritz is someone that we are going to have to keep an eye on for the next few years, because he is going to be right up there in the mix. But this is still, I think, Peter Wright's time, and he'll want to get that second world title. And this, with Michael van Gerwen out the way, maybe his next best opportunity to get that world title number 2. So I'm going Peter Wright 5-4 in that one. And then that brings us to the bottom of the draw. Luke Humphries, Gary Anderson. Like you, I've got it going with Luke Humphries. I fancied him to beat Michael van Gerwen in the last 16. Unfortunately, that couldn't happen for obvious reasons, but I think this is going to be where he gets that big scalp on the Ali Pali stage. I think he is going to put out Gary Anderson and get that Premier League spot that I'm offering the winner for this one. So I'm going to go 5-3 to Luke Humphries.
I do want to say you put words in my mouth. I never said I'm now tipping Michael Smith to win the world title. I just said that he looked like a world champion, and he very well could be on January 3rd.
He already is a world champion, of course.
And that's a good point. He's a world champion. But I didn't yet say that I'm tipping him. But should we pick our new champions and finalists, or?
Yes, let's go for it. Who have you got to now lift the title on the third, and who's going to be the runner-up?
Well, I'm going to have Michael Smith get to the finals. I'm going to say Peter Wright now gets to the finals. And now I will say I am tipping Michael Smith to become world champion. So you correctly predicted what I was going to say, but I hadn't yet said it. I think this is Michael Smith's time, and I think he wins the world title, beating Peter Wright. I'll go 7-4. What about you?
Like you, I'm now backing Peter Wright to get to the final. I think that'll be his third world final, and I've got to stick with who I've went with from the start of the tournament. I'm not going to change my mind now. I'm going to go with Going Price to take it. Like you said, the record between these two in the finals recently, in the TV finals, has been going in Going Price's favour. So I'm going to go Going Price to take it, and I'll go the same scoreline as you. I'm going to go 7-4, and we'll have Going Price as a two-time world champion.
Well, since I've picked both Michael Smith and Gerwin Price so far this tournament, we know both of them can't win. And we've also just jinxed 7-4 from being the scoreline in the final. But anything else for this week?
A few things. First of all, thank you to our guests, Rod and Jack, for joining us. Also, good luck to our 8 listeners now left in our World Championship sweepstake. Thanks to the guys at Windmar and Red Dragon. They've gave us 3 great prizes for that. Some signed Gerwin Price, Peter Wright, Michael Van Gerwen darts. So a nice way to start the year for 3 of our listeners. So yeah, good luck to all of those left in it. And as it is our last show of the year, a massive thank you to the team at the Weekly Dartscast. Burton, Hannah, Matthew, thank you for all your hard work over the year. We appreciate it. And thank you to all the guests that we've had in 2021, whether that's players, managers, referees, officials, legends. Thank you for them for taking the time to have a chat with us, and also to the people behind the scenes that have helped us set up those interviews during the year. But most importantly of all, of course, we've got to say thank you to our listeners, whoever's listening to this right now. We have probably some of the most loyal fans in darts. We've been going 5 years now, so we appreciate everyone that continues to listen week in, week out to what we have to say. So thank you very much for doing that. Happy New Year to you all. And when we get to New Year's Day, of course, you can once again enjoy the darts.
Yeah, I cannot believe it's been 5 years. It goes so quickly. Just echoing everything you just said there, thanks to everyone who's helped us over this last 5 years, including the entire team. Thanks to everyone who's listening. Thanks to Winmar for giving us not 1, not 2, but 3 prizes to give away during our World Championship sweepstake. We'll be back right after the World Final, after Michael Smith has become world champion, to, finish off our 5th year and begin our 6th. Enjoy the darts, as Alex says, until then, and hang tight when you're not enjoying the darts, because, well, 2022 is almost here.